G'day, my name is Brian from BsianTech. We're going to look into this Lenovo Legion 5i Pro Gen 6. It's a 16-inch gaming laptop and it's quite a nice looking laptop here with the Stingray white styling. And we're going to look into the features of this computer as well as the temperature and fan noise and have a quick peek of the internals. Now, as always, I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to different sections that you may be interested to save you time. Now, first off, as always, we're going to start off with what the configuration for this is. With the processor wise, it is using the 11th gen Intel core, and you can get the i5 or the i7. As for RAM wise, it can go up to maximum capacity of 32 gigs, and you do have two SOLDIMM slots, and with the storage wise, got two slot of N.2, which is NVMe SSD. As for the discrete graphics, you can choose between the NVIDIA RTX 3060 or the 3070. Now with the display wise, it is a 15.6 inch display, and you got a matte style display as well, and you can choose between the full HD or there's also the wide quad extended graphics array. Now I've got the full HD one. It is, for myself, when I measured in at 350 nits of brightness, but the wide quad extended graphics array is rated for 500 nits. When I tested this in the sun, it was actually not too bad. It's not designed for outdoor use as being gaming. This is more for artificial lighting, so this is taking it out of its environment, but it still did not too bad. And of course, in shaded areas, you can quite happily do that. So if you're doing a conference meeting or some sort of meeting outdoors in a cafe, that's not too bad at all. I also found there wasn't too much light leak around the edges as well. Now, as for the bezel wise, it's quite thin on the sides, and also it's not too bad thin on the bottom and top as well. Measuring the color gamut coverage of the full HD 350 nit display, it resulted with 96.5% sRGB coverage, 68.5% Adobe RGB coverage, and 71% DCI P3 coverage. Being a gaming laptop, the Legion 5i Pro display refresh rate can go all the way up to 165 Hz, which is absolutely sweet for gaming, because gaming, you can take advantages of that very fast refresh rate. Now, from my experience from business case applications, a lot of applications don't really take advantage of that very fast refresh rates, more than 60 Hz. But I like to actually see we can actually tone that down or have the configuration in Windows 11, because currently I've got Windows 11 on this. It aren't able to tone that refresh rate down to maybe about 60 Hz. It's just really stuck at 165 Hz. So that's really, for me, is more of a drain of the battery, but could be just a software update will be absolutely fantastic too, so we can able to change the refresh rate of that display to a lot lower. Now, if you also have ideas or different thoughts on applications for business case that actually is able to take advantage of that very fast refresh rate, please, I love to listen and learn from you. Put a comment below on about refresh rates for business case. It does have a 720p webcam located on top, and it has an e-shutter. Now, what is that? On the very right hand side of the laptop, you find there is a little switch which you can actually flick, and it is able to disable the webcam. Now, you don't see a physical shutter that goes over it, it just disables in the hardware manager. And then another little quick flick and it's back on again. This is a recording from the 720p webcam from the Legion 5i Pro. This is the video and audio unedited, so you can hear and see what the quality of the webcam is like. As always, I've got two types of camera turned on. I've got my one studio light turned on, and also the four downlights in this turned on for ambience. Now I'm going to turn off my one studio light off, and you'll see this adjust. Now the two downlights in front of me is a bit far away, so there's not much light currently hitting on my face. If you're in an office environment, you should get much more light than what I am currently at. So I'm going to turn my one studio light on back again, hopefully to see this adjust. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are of this webcam. Put a comment below. Let's have a look at ports. Starting on the left hand side, we've got the headphone jack, Thunderbolt 4 port, which is USB type C. Looking around the back, RJ45 Ethernet port, another Thunderbolt 4 port, two USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, they're type A ports, HDMI port, which is version 2.1, which is great for 8K monitors as well as 5K monitors as well. A USB 3.2 Gen 1 port. This one supports always on, and then the AC power port. Looking on the right hand side, we've got the webcam switch, USB 3.2 Gen 1 port. There are two speakers located on the bottom front on either side of the laptop. When I tested the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure it in at a peak of 92.2 decibels, which is decently loud. And if you try and do a presentation at a cafe or a bit of a noisy sort of ambient environment, you should still be able to hear from this laptop. As for the sound quality of the speakers, we've got a little bit of bass, but not that good, deep, low-end, oomphy bass. And as for the mids and highs, they're quite strong, and overall generally it's quite balanced between the high, mids and lows, and we've got good clarity between all the frequencies as well. Now, as for the acoustic wise, it's pretty much 360 degrees, and it's generally not too bad. Compared to a lot of the other gaming laptops on this channel, the speakers on this does pretty good and pretty decent, I have to say. But still, there's plenty of room for improvement, especially on the low end of the frequencies. The Legion 5i Pro has an 80 watt-hour battery, and it comes with a 230 watt power adapter. Now, this power adapter I would say is a medium large power adapter. It's not a really large power adapter, and it also runs off connectors by the Lenovo proprietary port. As for the battery life, I did test it in my 5 different modes. Now, this is running off Windows 11's power schemes, and in best performance it managed to get 54 minutes. In balance mode it managed to get an hour. In best power efficiency it managed to get an hour and 50 minutes. In battery saving mode it managed to get 3 hours, and in media mode 3 hours and 40 minutes. So in terms of a gaming laptop, it's pretty much consistent with a lot of the gaming laptops that's got discrete graphics, which runs most of the times a lot of the hardware and drains the battery quite quickly. So I wouldn't say it's got the best battery life. It pretty much sits average around all that. Seeing the results of the battery life on the Legion 5i Pro, it's pretty consistent with most of the gaming and also mobile workstations that have a discrete graphics in it that's been on this channel, as that is the most power hungry component on this powerful computer. These computers more than likely will live off the wall or stay connected to mains power, but I also want to make a disclaimer that my battery life test does put a very consistent workload across all the system resources. So you should get better numbers than what I would, but because most applications will only hit the system resources on burst speeds and not all of them at the most of the same time most of the time. So I'll just give you the worst case scenario. The weight of the Legion 5i Pro is 2.5, and add in the 230 watt power adapter becomes a combined weight of 3.52 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. As for the temperatures and fan noise of the Legion 5i Pro, when I took my measurements, my ambient temperature was 23 degrees Celsius. My ambient room noise was 37 decibels. Now, before I read out the numbers, I'll just give you a bit of reference points that your average hand is anywhere between 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. So I took my base measurement when the computer was on idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 25 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it was hit a maximum of 37 decibels, which is practically quiet. And the average internal core temperature was 33 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 20% load, so that's pretty much average use. So that's office productivity work, surfing the web, streaming video, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 30 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 37 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 44 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 50% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 34 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, hit a maximum of 38 decibels. So you hear the fan running a little bit. And the internal core temperature was averaging at 53 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 100% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 40 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, had a maximum of 49 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 74 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover when it was running at 100% load, and the hottest area measured in at 45 degrees Celsius. And of course the fan noise stayed at 49 decibels. The Legion 5i Pro isn't really that hot. It's actually only what I would call warm, considering at 100% load it only goes up to 40 degrees Celsius, and that's quite happy to touch that there. And as for the fan noise, it's not like a very high-pitched sound either. You do hear the fan blowing, but it's actually much of a lower end rumble than anything else. So this is doing very well, the thermals on this, and still considering having the good performance. Let's have a look at the stability performance of the Legion 5i Pro. Now this particular unit is configured with an i7-11600H processor, and looking on the Intel website, it reports it has a maximum turbo boost of 4.6 gigahertz and has a base clock speed of 2.9 gigahertz at 45 watt TDP. It can go all the way down to 2.5 gigahertz at 35 watt TDP. It's feeling hot or it's trying to save power, but ideally we want to see it at 2.9 gigahertz or above. Now I've got this computer connected to mains power, and I also have this computer set to best performance mode as well, and I've had it pretty much running on 100% load for the last close to 4 hours, and that's the processor, RAM, hard drive, and putting also a bit of load on the discrete graphics as well. And I can see that the speed of the processor is anywhere between 3.5 to about 3.8 gigahertz. It's ranging between that. So I would say a nice stable sort of performance is at 3.6 gigahertz. And this has been pretty stable, rock stable there. Hasn't got any fluctuation at all in the speed. Anyway, that doesn't go below the 3.5 gigahertz. And we have an internal core temperature around about 76 degrees Celsius, which is doing pretty good for internal core temperature. And now we have a look at the single core behavior of the processor in the i7 in the Legion 5i Pro. I'm going to start a single core task in Citybench R23. I'll also start the clock watch, and we'll watch the processor speed and see how that performs. And at the moment we're about 4.3 gigahertz, and it is still stable at 4.3 gigahertz after the first 10 seconds. And we're going to hit the 20-second mark very soon, and it still is running at 4.3 gigahertz. Now this computer is connected to mains power still and set to best performance, so allowing the fan run its course. Now I do hear the fan going off, of course, and now after the 30-second mark we're still at 4.3 gigahertz. It's doing pretty well and stable at the first 30 seconds. And now we've just passed the 10-minute mark, and we're near the finish of the task for the single core and Citybench, and we are very stable and very consistent at 4.3 gigahertz the whole entire time this has been running the single core task. I did perform the benchmarks on the Legion 5i Pro. Now this one's configured with an i7-11600H processor with 16 gigs RAM, 512 gig SSD, and the RTX 3070. So here are the scores for Pass Mark, Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Geekbench 5, Crystal Disk Mark, Eugene Engine, Blender, Pugin Photoshop, Pugin Lightroom, Pugin Premiere Pro, Pugin After Effects, Pugin DaVinci Resolve, Thermark, Luxmark, and SpecView Pref. And some gaming benchmarks like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry New Dawn, Far Cry 6, Immortal Phoenix Rising, and F1 2021. As for the keyboard, the Legionnaire 5i Pro comes with a full-size keyboard with the number pad on the very right. It's good to see that Lenovo still include the number pad, as it's very useful for games and a lot of office productivity work. As for the touch and feel of the keyboard, it's very similar to the Lenovo ThinkPad series keyboard. And those who follow my channel know that I really love the ThinkPad series keyboard. The only difference with this keyboard is that the control and function key is in the normal way around. It's not swapped around like the ThinkPad series, so it's pretty easy to get used to this keyboard. Now, as for each individual key, it's got a good, nice amount of travel for each key, and it's got a good tactile feel and bounce to each individual key as well, and the surface of each key is very smooth, more smoother than the ThinkPad series. And it's got good spacing in between of the keys, as well as each key is quite large as well, just like the ThinkPad series keyboard. The keyboard is backlit. There are two options for the backlight for the keyboard, and you can get a white backlit keys, or you get a 4-zone RGB backlit keys for this keyboard, which is great. Now, to engage the keyboard, it's just a matter of function spacebar, and there are 3 settings: off, low, and high. As for the trackpad, it is a decent sized trackpad. Not overly large and not too small. It's a very comfortable medium sized trackpad. I actually like the size of this trackpad, and the texture of the trackpad is silky glass smooth. And even if you've got moist fingers, it registers quite happy as well. And it is mechanical, so you can depress it at the very bottom, and it's hinged at the very top. It's multi gesture as well. And for the palm rest, now this whole chassis is what I will call plastic, and it's actually quite a very smooth plastic. It's not like crazy smooth, but it's got a little texture to it, but it's a quite smooth texture to the palm rest, and quite happily have your palm resting on there without having your palm resting on the trackpad when you're hitting the home keys, the F and J keys, and it is quite nice. Now, as for the build construction, like I said, it is pretty much plastic on top, plastic on bottom, plastic on side, but it's still quite rugged. I'm just doing quite a bit of a texture, and the hinge itself is very nice because I find it quite very smooth. So I'm just gonna do my one finger test to show you. One finger without too much issues. You can just pretty much, and it's consistent pressure all the way through. You can feel that, right? And it goes up to 180 degrees. Now, most gaming computers really only go to about, what I would say, 145 degrees, but this one can go further than that. So that's very different. I don't see in gaming computers. Now, the hinge itself, when I do the hinge test, it does lift a little bit, which is a bit of a surprise on both sides, but I'm very surprised. It does only take very least amount of effort just to bring this up, and it is a very consistent open for the hinge. How the airflow works is it sucks in air from the very bottom, and then it passes through the fans, and then it pushes out to the rear and also to the side vents as well. Let's have a look at the internals. First off, we need to undo the 10 Phillip head screws. It's good to see that Lenovo is still using the Phillip head screws because that's an easy screwdriver to find. After that, we just need to pry it open. Now, just using our prying tool, and start from the rear center and work your way across on either side. After that, you can pretty much just pull this apart. Now, I've just pre-undone this to speed up time, and this back cover is, let's just say, it's plastic. But what's really interesting is to see the other side of it and the coating they use for heat management and thermal management. It's just interesting, that's all I want to say. All right, now at the bottom here, we've got the 80 watt-hour battery, and it is connected through this connector here. You can pretty much disconnect this connector here, and if you're having some sort of power issues or just want to reset the battery as well too. Now, on the left hand side here, now it is held in by 3 screws, this heat shield. I'll just pre-undone to speed up time. And underneath there, we have the CMOS battery. Again, it's connected to this connector. Again, if you have some clock issues, you can disconnect that here. And then we've got a M.2 slot. It goes all the way to here, so you can take in a 2280 format SSD. And then underneath this heat shield, again, I'm just going to pry this open, and we've got 2 SODIMM slots for your memory or RAM slots, so you can upgrade it later on. It's great to see. And then underneath this heat shield, again, it's held in by 3 screws, and I'm just pre-undone them to speed up time. And underneath here, you see the other M.2 SSD slot, again, 2280. This is the primary one, and then above that is the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi module. Overall, the Legion 5i Pro is a good looking computer, has a decent display, has a good keyboard, as most Lenovo's have good keyboards, decent trackpad, and has a very good performance for the components, and very powerful components they are, and also very good temperatures and fan noise. They're actually quite low and quite cool. What I'd like to see is a 1080p webcam. That would be fantastic to see, and also a bit of a boost in the speakers department there. So, but overall, I can recommend the Legion 5i Pro. Now, I hope you find this video informative or enjoyed it, and even if to support my channel, smash that like button. It does help me out. And if you haven't already, subscribe my channel by hitting the subscribe button on the screen. I do upload a new video every week, and if you want to support me a little bit more, I do have membership by hitting that join button as well. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting, and I'll catch you in the next video.